minimum and maximum of 90 and 70. The building varies because of the odd shape and is not the whole corner, or more looking at your plans, the southwest corner of that building is not within the setback. And so we're seeking relief of 99 feet because we had to cock that building. And I'm just looking at the site plans, the conceptual site plan sheet 2 of 2. You can see we have some key dimensions, and there's diamonds associated with those dimensions, and that's the relief that we're asking. So one of the relief that we're seeking is from the front yard setback, and that's in direct relation to the unique characteristics of the subject property. In terms of those wetlands, we needed to rotate that building. We're also seeking a side yard variance. Again, the code requires 40 to 70 feet. And it's odd, and most of you I know have been on this zoning board for quite some time. Normally, you just have a building envelope, and the building needs to be within the envelope. In this MU zone, there's a minimum and maximum, so that they want the building in a certain location. And because of the wetlands, we couldn't meet that side yard setback. And the same with the rear yard setback. The building, again, cannot be entirely within that minimum and maximum to the rear yard setback because of those proximities to wetlands. The last item of relief was that specifically it is from that section 12.11, which required us to dress up the front of that, was that the loading dock, it needs to be, the code says recessed or screened so as not to be visible from neighboring streets and neighboring properties. We were able to screen a portion of that, but not in its entirety. We were able to screen about 33 feet and not the entire 75. So what we have done is we've put a landscaped area right in that easternmost section, and that...
Mr. Casali, can you hold 1 second? Zoning official tripped the breaker and now it's off, so you may be able to turn it back on again by hand and be up and running.
I'm trying.
No, I see the green. This is a positive.
It's a positive, he says. You found the break, there's a break back there. And the bathrooms on the first floor, kind of do a home.
You're not the electrical inspector, are you?
I can hear the fan on it now, which I didn't before.
Bag of millions. All right, so where we left off. Yeah, so let me, we'll start again where we left off. We were talking about the parking. We're not here for dimensional relief on the parking, 3 loading docks, and the forklift access. So in terms of you just have to click it once, Tiffany, and then it'll get it going. Nope, are you froze?
Don't do anything. Drought is on, right? There you go.
I think that menu, that's on the screen. Don't touch.
All right.
Okay.
20 minutes of our life we will never get back.
That was only 20 minutes.
So, in terms of the parking, this is the bermed area that is related to one of the dimensional relief, and I'll get into it a little bit more. And then there's also landscape buffering. We wanted to provide screening. I see some of the adjacent abutters here. They had testified at planning. We've made some modifications, hopefully to soften this a little bit in terms of the dissimilar zones that are subdivided, bifurcated by Central Street. And also, part of what we had agreed to at master plan was that this sidewalk along Central Street was going to be improved. The planner, we were gonna get more specific at the preliminary plan stage. There is a bunch, if not most of the panels need to be removed and replaced. And they also asked for some traffic symbols, as well as the planner had asked, and we had agreed to at master plan, that we would put in a gazebo gathering area for employees. Sewer, straightforward. We have a force main within Central Street that will tie into. There's no waste bearing as part of this proposal in terms of the use inside the building. That will only be for employee use. We have gas, very fortunate, right outside of Central Street. And one of the specifics of this project, one of the benefits that I'd like to think is mutually beneficial to not only the applicant, but also the town, is we're entering a public-private sort of co-op that existing water main on Mechanic Street at the expense of MST, possibly a TSA agreement. 1,800 feet of 8-inch water main is now gonna front Mechanic Street and all the way up Central. Again, it's beneficial to us that we'll be able to tie in our existing facilities for both domestic and fire protection. We'll be able to tie in the proposed facility, but of course, this being a public utility, anybody in this area will now benefit both to have domestic and fire protection. In terms of the drainage, relatively straightforward. In terms, we have so much wetlands around this property, it needs to just be cleaned and attenuated and discharged into the freshwater wetlands. You can see the landscape plan. We're a little advanced at this point because of our master plan hearing. Diane Soul, local landscape architect. You can see the amount of street trees and landscaping on this bermed area, and as much as we could around the perimeter for the freshwater wetlands. That's a better shot of the amount of landscaping. I know it seems exorbitant, but we thought it was necessary, being with the dissimilar use so close by. In terms of permitting, as Attorney Roca said, we received our master plan and a positive recommendation to this board in June. We're here tonight for those 4 specific in terms of dimensional relief. You can see a portion of the building is within the front yard setback, but specifically not all of it. So out of an abundance of caution, we're requesting relief of about 99 feet. And that is the distance from the rotation of that building. Same with the side yard setback. We obviously cannot put the building within those setbacks because of the freshwater wetlands. Same with the rear yard setbacks. We're in that same position. Again, unique characteristics of the subject property. And then the last one is the design standard. It was a little hard to describe without the PowerPoint. But in essence, the loading dock needs to be set back 75 feet. And there's a portion of this loading dock we just could not push any further without, again, we would have to really drastically reduce the size of this building. So we're here before you tonight, not for a use variance or a special use, but just for quantifiable, those 4 pieces of dimensional relief. We still have
Mr.
ways.
Casale, can you just go back to the prior screen? I have a question for you. I'm looking at 1, 2, and 3.
Yes.
Okay. I'm trying to understand why you're seeking dimensional variances, and I know it's required under the planning proposal. If I'm reading this correctly, the front yard, you're proposing 99 feet, and that's in excess of 70 feet. With the minimum side yard, you're proposing 211, when the maximum is 70. And number 3, the rear setback is, the maximum is 70, and you're requesting 460. So those are all in excess of the setbacks. Am I have something backwards in my head?
And it's odd, again, most communities just have one building envelope, and the building just has to be within inside that envelope. In this particular zone, they want the building to be no closer than 50, but no further than 7.
Oh, I understand.
And so this corner is further than the 70, specifically it's 170 feet away, and so that's why we're asking for relief here. And again, this side should be within there, but that dimension is about 281 feet, and so we're asking.
Now I get it. It's a commercial property. It's not like a normal side yard variance for a residential property.
Yeah, so, you know, and
Okay.
it makes sense. They don't want the big parking fields up front. You want to see the building and they have the parking back, but you don't want the building on the front of the property. And so, and then the last one is, this.
Can I just
Yeah,
ask
of
a
course.
question related to that? So just say this property, you know, had no wetlands on it, and you wanted to go by, you wanted to go by the ordinance of 1, 2, and 3. The way I read that is, that building's gonna go in the front from the 50 to 70, and from the back 40 to 70, from the sides 40 to 70. So basically, all you really have is 70 feet around your building on a piece of property.
You have to build an enormous.
Yeah, it makes-
So whether there's wetlands or not, or everyone is coming to this board, for some sort of dimensional relief. And it's just-
Must have to do that.
It's because of the unique characteristics, because this is just an oddly shaped piece, and it's very large in size, and so for you to put all of the front, all of the side, and all of the rear of the building within that 50 to 70 feet,
Yeah,
that means your building has to be enormous. Unlike a house on a 10-acre piece that just has to fit inside that envelope.
Now, related to the loading dock, so how do they determine a loading dock? To me, a loading dock would be from the building. So what you're doing is you're taking the lanes of where the tractor trailers park, is that, the loading dock would be building. Because you know, you could have a trailer that's 40 feet, you could have a trailer that's 80 feet, right?
That's right.
So like, so how do they, so it sounds like the planning board said that was in the that wasn't in the setback, but to me, it is in the setback.
While the building loading dock is not in the setback, we feel as though that the loading dock will encompass the truck as well. And so this is designed for what is a WB 68, or what we see as the 18-wheelers around here. And we know that if we have 18-wheelers in here, especially in this closest space, we should be 75 feet from that property line, and we're not.
But you guys are the one that brought it in front of planning, or planning brought that to you guys?
We brought this in front of, I mean, we've had pre-application meetings with them, and I think it's I'm certainly comfortable with this. It may may seem a little bit conservative, but I think out of an abundance of caution, if you meet the spirit of the ordinance, you would think that you wouldn't want someone not only to see the dock, but maybe the trucks that back in there. And I'm sure that is gonna be some of your questions in terms of when are we gonna run these trucks and hours of operations, and that's why Craig is here. Just to wrap this up and then be happy to answer questions, should we receive approval tonight, we still have a ways to go. We have to receive a wetlands permit from DEM. We actually need a physical alteration permit from DOT, Central Ave being state highway, North Smithfield water, sewer, fire, and then we've got to go back to planning for preliminary and hopefully final is delegated to the administrative officer. So I know that was a lot in a choppy time frame, but I would be happy, or we would be happy to answer questions, Mr. Chairman, of you and members of the board, or if the public wants to speak.
Yeah, I think we'll do the public part, Steve, at this point, and then we'll do our questions after.
Yeah.
If the applicant's done with their presentation at this
Yeah.
point and just has follow-up, and the board has no other questions of the applicant, you can certainly open it up to the public.
Okay, so we should ask our questions now then, before we open up to the public?
Any questions you have right now about the presentation that's been made to this point, I'd ask and get them out of your minds and see if you can get any understanding. And then, when you're done, I'd open it up to the public.
So the applicant?
I just have, actually, want to confirm one thing with the building official, and then ask Mr. Archambault a question. With regard to the, I want to just confirm that, according to the zoning map of Water Supply Protection Overlay District, revised on 8/24/20, that this subject premises is under the exempt zone for analyzing.
It is.
Okay, and Mr. Archambault, my question to you is, notwithstanding the shading and requirements that have been set forth in the planning decision, the loading dock ordinance specifically talks about it be recessed and screened. So the question is, does the applicant's relief, in addition to the requested setback, have to incorporate some discussion of the screening?
Well, you have to ask the question through what you see with the planning board. Did they adequately address that? If you don't feel that the planning board adequately addressed screening and buffering, because I see the same thing you see in 12.11 subsection 14, which is relief the applicant's asking for. If you don't feel that the landscaping or the setbacks are sufficient enough, you could always remand that question back to the planning board, or you could, under the scope of this particular part of the ordinance, make a suggestion to the applicant to add certain landscaping. That'd probably be the easiest thing to do. But you have that discretion based on what's in the ordinance.
So that is part of the relief requested, because that's the extent of the screening. The loading dock, and
Oh, I see.
talk about it can't be screened because of where it is.
And the screening is twofold. This is a mounded area, and this is a retaining wall, and we've done that purposely, this mounded area, so that we can countersink those trucks in the loading dock. And we've also proposed screening throughout all 75 feet, so that it will be screened to the maximum extent practicable. And so I just wanted to show, so that area that just came up in red, that's gonna be a bermed area. That'll be 2 to 3 feet in height, to try to knock down some of this visual. And then there will also be landscaping there, the retaining wall, but then when you further look at the landscaping, she has screening all around the detention basin And then we have that screening here along with that bermed area. So that's just the bermed area, and that's the screened area. And to be specific, I think it's about 2 to 3 feet at its maximum height.
Before you put the trees on top of it.
Correct. And then we have the arborvitae on.
What types of trees are those?
Those are evergreens, arborvitae or the like, something hardy that's not gonna lose its leaves and gonna stay non-deciduous.
If I may, Joe, and just to amplify on your question, in response to your question, Chris, if you're looking at 12.11, 14 of our zoning ordinances, subsection C that you were reading from, loading dock areas shall be set back, recessed, or screened so as not to be visible from neighboring property or streets. That's what you were drilling down at.
Right.
So as not to be visible from neighboring property or streets. So with what the applicants propose, you have to determine whether you think that's adequate. You could certainly require more if you don't think it is.
But Steve, in the Mr. Archibald, in the planning board decision, they completely call that out, that it needs to be screened based upon the ordinance. So they have no choice but to make it not visible, right?
Yeah, and your job is to deal with zoning, but here the zoning and the planning overlap. That's why I started the answer by saying that if you feel the planning board's decision is adequate enough, you can certainly go by what they've said. But if you feel that you need to add to that, you have the discretion under this part of the ordinance. I mean, it's very straightforward. It says, so as not to be visible from the street. To me, that's very black and white.
Right.
Doesn't seem to be,
Right.
you know, so if you think the relief that planning board is granted is adequate enough to do that, based on what the applicant's putting before you, that's one thing. If you don't think it is, you certainly have discretion. You agree, Mr. Casale?
Yeah, so the origin of this was, as we went through staff comments, we were asked to beef up the screening and landscaping in that area, and that is what the planning board saw and voted on. Yes, this was updated, so that's screening and landscaping, and I think, again, to be conservative, they just put that in the, they put it in the decision because it was an important point that night.
Mr. Casale, what's the distance of your point of ingress into the property? Because it seems to be wider than usual, and I understand why, given the size of
Yeah,
the trucks, don't get me wrong, I'm just,
it's wider than usual, because it needs to make that turn.
Gotcha.
And then, so when a truck comes in, if it's a WB 67, a WB 68, and then also when it comes out, so that's why that radius is a lot larger than what we normally see as a 15.
yes, but if you could just set it forth on the record exactly how wide is that?
I believe that it's 30 feet in width.
Okay.
Let me confirm that. And that, too, will be approved as part of the physical alteration permit by the Department of Transportation.
Okay. Now, I understand this is like trying to put a 10-carat diamond on a two-prong setting.
It's all right.
Well, you won't have any trucks back up on Central Street based on your design. They're gonna pull it in and they're gonna back up inside.
That in essence is correct. We didn't want trucks to be on Central Street. We want them to be able to come in and do all of the turning movements within the property. But because of the way the building's orientated, because it's so close to the road, it just required instead of a 24-foot wide curb opening, we're at 30 feet.
Yeah. If my sense of proportion is correct, 30 feet is actually about the size that I cut out to the door, right?
Probably a little bit small.
Okay.
Now, Mr. Casale, on this, I noticed that there's coming from the bottom, where the property comes up and it jots in, like 10 feet.
Yep.
That's not the roadway, right? That's just a 10-foot buffer off the
Yeah, that little area, so the roadway, yeah, the roadway is, that's the edge of pavement, and then that's the edge of sidewalk, and I don't know why, it's just that little cutout over there. It must go back to when the lot maybe was originally created.
And who owns that, the town of Smithfield?
The town owns anything, this is the town right-of-way, and this is our property.
So when you're taking your measurements, you're on the town lot, right? So technically you have another 10 feet if you're on the town lot.
Yes, that's correct. We're from the, we are from the property line, and so yes, we're another 10 feet from the actual sidewalk in some areas. That's correct.
Just to expound on something we already discussed, if that building, if the wetlands didn't exist and you just wanted to put that size building on that property and you met the front setbacks, you would still be asking us for a dimensional variance from the rear setbacks?
From the rear and side.
And the rear and the side?
Yeah.
And why does that exist?
Because that in this zone, it's not that they want you to be within that building envelope. They want you to be,
They want you to consume it.
yeah,
Yeah.
so in terms of, that's a better shot. That's what we normally see, the minimum setback, and as long as the building is anywhere within, we never come before you, because that building, as long as it's not protruding out the front or out the rear or the side, but in this code, in this zone, they want that building to be within that strip.
So basically, that's what the building would look like if you were to go by.
And I get it if it only was to meet the front yard setback,
Right.
because you want the building close to the road, you don't want it on the road, but you've got it further enough back that you can't put parking spaces in front of the building. But the way it's written and the way we read it, if you don't meet it on all sides completely, you
No,
have to
I
seek,
think you're right.
you have to seek relief. I know it's odd, because the amount of relief we're seeking, 400 some odd feet, we would never, anytime you're more than a couple percentage points, you're not coming and asking for something that drastic.
Is that unique to our town? Or have you seen this before in other locations?
I've only seen it in this zone, in this town. I don't, I don't know of, I know the city of Providence has something in one of their zones, that they want something, but it's only because they want the building on the front, in the Benefit Street East Side area. But I think this is the only, town that has this, and it's the only zone in this town that has it. So, but that's why we have zoning boards, so you can grant relief from some of your more unique regulations.
How long has that been in place?
I think MU2 has been,
I believe it's since they established the ordinance. I don't know if they added it at some point in time, but I never really looked into it.
I think MU2 is fairly new.
Yeah, well, how many years? 99?
Have we had anybody come into an MU2 zone
No,
And-
inside this board.
and build a maximum building without?
Not that
That's
I
crazy,
know.
like, you would never see that, right?
Not for a property that looks like that, yeah,
Not,
unless you're doing like an indoor practice facility or something crazy.
Typically, with the intent of something like that, they wanna try to keep the face of the building within that zone.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it makes the building be up further towards the street so you see. That's usually how they want it. And they don't normally go all the way around the property with it, so it makes you kinda have that orientation of the building. I don't know, it's kinda unique.
and you could subdivide it and be within the setbacks, and just get the variance in front, but.
Right.
Well, then we would have a non-conforming lot, we would have a lot, without frontage.
Minimum,
So either way, we'd be seeking, some sort of relief from it.
yeah, you definitely be for the front lot. Anybody else have any questions from the board? Okay, at this point, I'll open it to the public. Anybody that from the public wants to speak for or against it, please come to the podium,
Hello. My name's,
Would you raise your hand, sir?
oh, yes.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony that you will give tonight will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name for the record.
Christian D. Rezendes,
Spell your last name, please.
Derezendes. Okay. So, I was before the planning board a couple of months ago, and we have some tremendous concerns. I am at 409 Central Street. My mother is at 411 Central Street. So she is the house directly across the street from what you're seeing, and then I'm right next to it. This has always been primarily a residential neighborhood, and I know that this is, zoned for mixed use and everything, but, I'll just read some of this. While we understand the land is zoned for mixed use, keep in mind that this section of Central Street on the Rhode Island side, from the corner of Mechanic Street to the Rhode Island Mass State line, has always mainly been residential for the past 70 years at least, with the current standing MST building at the very end of it. Parking a warehouse in the middle of this neighborhood, we feel would be damaging to the integrity of the neighborhood and lessen the property values of the abutting homes in the long run. This proposal is more suited, we feel, for an area like Industrial Drive in North Smithfield or other similar locations. My understanding on mixed use too, as well, is that for noxious noises, there's no use should be permitted which is found to generate unreasonably high traffic volumes, environmentally unsound or visually unobjectable buildings, and something that is not in the character of the neighborhood. And I also understand that, building something that looks like a warehouse is also not something that you would normally find in mixed use. This is just my understanding. I really respect the presentation that Mr. Casali has given, because I can see the thorough nature of the work and everything that's been put there. The biggest concern, we have, frankly, is traffic. And the traffic moving in, like you had mentioned something about the opening there and the 30 feet and whatnot. Seeing large tractor trailers on this street trying to turn in to this new facility and back out again, that's something that we're really, very concerned about. As far as getting up and looking at a loading dock across the street every day, and we know that they've also went through some great pains as far as trying to screen that in the presentation. That's very true. But looking at that every day is something that we, don't like. And as far as the expansion of that, we wonder, what's that going to bring to the town? Well, or to the street? Well, additional shifts, additional workers, additional traffic, additional congestion. We are also concerned about noise in that particular spot. What is the amount of noise that is going to be, because I can hear them a little bit down there, and actually they've been a really good business at the end of the street. They haven't, they're there, they don't bother anybody, and that's fine. But the fact that it's coming down further this way, and it feels like, it almost feels like they're, with the amount of wetlands that are there, it feels like they're trying to park a bus on a life raft. It just, it's all, with all the amount of wetlands that are there. And I'm not sure if they could even, from the looks of it, get away with a building that's 23,600 square feet. But suppose they can. And we have concerns about other things too, like water and whatnot. And there was some mention before about piping water down from Mechanic Street over to this area. So that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say on that. Thank you.
Anybody else want to speak?
So, Steve Trigella, I live at 83.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Please state your name.
Stephen Trigella.
Spell your last name.
Traghella. Good. So I live at 83 Quaker Highway, and so I'm on like this side of the facility. But my questions are pretty much the same as the last time that we had the meeting for the planning board. The facility, like, we haven't really heard about what the facility does. They're claiming that it's a light industrial use, but we don't know what they do, because last time at the at the first meeting, they said it was more for like a storage facility, like bringing in materials, transferring materials manufactured at the existing building to the new one, and then transporting them out. But if that's the case, then it's really not an industrial use building, it's a storage building, which is not permitted under MU2. Neither is a recycling facility, so if it's the same use as the existing building that they're doing, then that's also not permitted under MU2. Let's see. Got a bunch of highlighted things here in the zoning board thing. There was supposed to be a site visit with the planning board, and that was supposed to be open to the public, which we did not get any notifications for. We only got the first notification for the meeting we had last time. The attorney mentioned that they are going to do a traffic study, so that's a moot point. So regarding section 12.7, permitted uses in MU1 and MU2, section C notes the light industrial thing that they're claiming that this facility is going to be. But again, we don't know what they're doing there, so we can't really say if it's going to produce noxious noise, fumes, generate intense traffic, etc., which are all prohibited in this area. Setbacks, which are noted in 12.11, which is one of the points of this meeting. They're obviously claiming that they want to be within those, but the loading dock section specifically, the area that the gentleman over here, Stephen, read off, was that he said that the area shall be set back, recessed, or screened as to not be visible from neighboring properties or streets, which we've shown on the presentation that they will be visible from the street, so that's not allowed. And in no event shall a loading dock be closer than 75 feet from the property line, which it will be, so that's also not allowed. Another point that I wanted to bring up was at the last meeting that they had, they said that they were going to have storage containers and 18-wheelers. So if you have 18-wheelers on the site, which they have 3 loading docks, and then you also have storage containers outside the facility, you're way over the maximum allowed capacity for storage, which is 5% of the floor area of the building. So 5% of the proposed building is 1,180 square feet. 2 18-wheelers alone would be over that. So if you had a third there, you'd be over that. And if you had storage outside, you'd be way over that. There were a few other things we talked about at the last meeting, like the curbs, the sidewalks, downlighting from the building, but that would all come into effect if it passed this meeting that we're in tonight. Because all those things are prohibited, like fences at the front of the building are prohibited. They said they wanted to put one all the way around the structure. Wall packs off the building are also prohibited. They said they wanted to put those on the building. Wall packs, like downlighting from the building. The exterior of the building, Joe touched on that. They're gonna change 3 sides of it to be fitting for the area, not be a metal building. Let's see. The security fencing is section 19. It says no security fencing is allowed on the front or side of a building, period. Fencing may be used for security purposes in the back of the building only. That's pretty much it. I just wanted to touch base on those things and bring them to your attention.
Anybody else from the public who want to speak? Okay, at this point, I'll entertain a motion to close the public part. You want to keep it open? Live and respond first?
Yeah, if council wants to, I think she wants to.
Okay, you want to come up and speak to any of that?
Sure. So I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole about the use, but I will say that before submitting these applications, we did speak at length with the town planner to go through and ensure that this was a light industrial use. The description, while the use isn't in front of you tonight, just to make the record clear, the new buildings to process manufactured materials to be analyzed for precious metal content, and the materials taken in are from finished goods, so it's not a heavy industrial use, it's a light industrial use. But we did review that to ensure that we are a permitted use. And then the site visit, just to clarify, the planning board did not require a site visit. There was no secret site visit held, so they didn't find that necessary. And then there's no storage containers proposed at this. That wasn't in any testimony, and there's not gonna be storage containers at this facility. So that really is the extent of my comments, unless you have any questions based on the comments there.
Do you have like a time frame of when 18-wheelers are gonna operate at that facility, or?
And I can bring Craig up, but they do not operate overnight. There'll be no overnight deliveries or late night deliveries, but he can confirm that. Rather hear it from him than me.
No, that's correct. So deliveries and shipments will all be arranged during the day hours.
You need to be sworn in, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Craig Haddad?
Do solemnly swear the testimony that you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
State your name, please.
Craig Haddad?
My last name?
Haddad. So the question was about tractor trailer deliveries and shipments. Normally would be arranged during the day. There are times when a driver is late and he'll call and ask if he can still deliver his load. It doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. But everything is arranged during the day while administration is there to do the paperwork and things like that. So there's no plan for overnight deliveries like a BJ's or anything, middle of the morning.
Your day, what was it, 8 to 8?
Probably 7 to 5.
7, 8, and 5?
And how many trucks do you envision a day on average?
For this building? It could be maybe 4 to 8, maybe 2, sometimes none. It really depends on incoming, and it's not, I don't think it's gonna create much more traffic. Those trucks that are gonna go, some of the trucks that are gonna go there are already coming to ours. So it'll be spread out a little bit. It's not, I don't think that's gonna increase too much.
So you're expanding to take on more?
We're expanding for space to take on better machinery and a better layout.
So it's pretty much the same amount you're taking now, you're just gonna be using different machinery to?
Right. It surely can increase a little bit, but I don't think that's gonna change anything of the daily activities.
It's not like if this building's the same size as your other building, that you're gonna double, right?
Right.
When we talked, you mentioned there will be no more than a 10% increase.
Yeah, my guess would probably be 10%.
What about the fences? They mentioned about a fence. You guys didn't mention that in your presentation. Is the plan to put a fence in the front or on the sides of that, or?
Yeah, we do wanna have a fence around the facility for security reasons.
So I think that's another variance, right? Steve? The fence is not allowed around that facility, right?
Say in one of the subsections that it's not permitted.
Yeah, hold on, let me grab it.
We have one at the existing facility, it's a security fence.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry, we have one at the existing facility that we didn't get a variance for, the security fence, along with all the security measures.
Move
And
it to
121119, fencing. No security fencing is allowed on front or side of a building. Fencing may be used for security purposes in back of the building and only if buffered from the street. Is that what you were thinking?
So if they wanted to do that, they have to ask for a variance on that?
Yes.
Is there any way to get an elevational drawing of the screening?
Yes, but not at this, I don't have one at this time. You want an architectural rendering of what the screening's gonna look like? The best I have, in terms of the screening, would be probably her landscape plan, of what that's gonna look like. I don't have a rendering, we don't have a rendering of that.
But you could provide that.
Yeah, and we, per the planning board decision, we're required to put a whole packet in, along with a lighting plan and some of the other things that have been mentioned too.
I don't see any lighting related in 1211, brand new too. Does anyone know if there's something lighting related in 1211, because I don't see it.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, at the planning hearing, we committed to being compliant with your, your lighting ordinance, that we would be dark sky compliant on all of the fixtures. They would be LED directional light fixtures, and that we would submit a photometric plan to the planner for review to prove that we won't have any light pollution over our property lines. We realize that it exists now because you're on a state highway, but at least it will show that it won't come from our facility.
And you guys are not planning on having storage containers on that property?
No, I'm not sure where that came from. Storage containers are not proposed, and we'll stipulate that for the record, just to be clear.
Traffic study sets coming?
That will, yes, correct, and we'll have that for preliminary.
If you don't get that road connecting the two properties, how would you have to access the property?
We would have to go out and onto Central Street, and so we want to have a connector in between the property, but we have to petition the DEM and ask them, to work within those wetlands.
And just to clarify, that's internal traffic, the 18-wheelers aren't going back and forth on that road.
Yes, correct.
So your other property is on what street? It's to the north on this map?
Yes, it's also on Central, so the other property is here.
Oh, so that's where your trailer truck's coming in now?
That's correct. Right now, the trailer truck comes in.
Right.
There's a fence around the entire property, setback, and we would consider something very similar here. Planning had asked of us, and we think it's a good idea internally if we would interconnect these, especially to have a walking trail for the employees to go back and forth between the buildings, even though there is a sidewalk here, and we agreed to petition DM to do that.
So it's pretty safe to say that the trucks that are going down that street today to go to the original facility are just gonna peel off and go to that secondary?
That's correct. What Craig testified to is, of course, we'd like to increase business. Do we think it could be up to 10%? Yeah, but respectfully, in terms of a traffic study for a trailer truck or two, if it's not during those peak hours of 4 to 6, it's not even gonna show up on the traffic study, and same with a couple of employees. If their turnover, their shift is not in that peak hour, it respectfully is the proverbial drop in the bucket.
Now, the building that you actually proposed here, if you had the area over there, you would build a bigger building? You'd propose to build a bigger building there?
When we originally met with MST, they wanted a building 30 to 40,000 square feet. Once we had the wetlands delineated and then we had the topography done and understood it needed to be some type of a walkout or some type of stepped foundation, that's when we brought in an architect, not just to have a box on this plan, to have something that we can grade if we are approved, because we're asking for specific dimensional variances. So we try to put some forethought, at least into the architecturals conceptually. It meets their program, it's not perfect, I guess we all would like it a little bit larger, but, you know, considering the proximity to their existing building, it was really, I think, an opportunity that this parcel just sold, was it a year ago, 2 years ago? It was for sale for a while, when it sold, and they were able to buy it and now develop it. And again, to just keep hammering home, without them, who's bringing up 1,800 feet of water line, that's gonna service every one of these homes if they choose to partake in that. You don't often see people come to the zoning board with something.
Now, on that building, what part of that's gonna be stone?
You know, where, either that front facing or, this facing here, we've committed to, under preliminary working, we're gonna have the architectural renderings furthered when we're back before, but we should have some time. The DM's gonna take us 6 to 8 months. We're hoping to break ground in April of 2023, but, it's getting late.
And now, what about noise? There was concern about the noise. Is the noise only from the 18 rails, or are you hearing noise coming out of the buildings?
I'll rely on the further testimony of the, I think he described them as a good neighbor. The noise is going to be under the, what I would assume would be today and under those normal business hours. It's something to be expected. It's certainly not heavy industrial. We're not breaking stone outdoors, but yeah, I'm sure there'll be garage doors opening and closing and loading and unloading and so forth and so on.
Now, inside the building, you know, I guess not to really get deep into what you guys are doing, but is there a possibility for a chemical to be leaked? Are you guys using chemicals in your process? Like, how are you separating? Is it just ripping it apart? You know,
So
if
this-
you're not using chemicals, is there, you know, what are you doing with that chemical? You know, is it
Yeah, there's no chemical.
discharge area, or you got a collection system?
There's no chemicals that are involved in the operations that we propose to put in this building. It's size reduction machinery, and basically it's gonna make the pieces of material homogeneous so that we can sample them and take a percentage of that, bring it to the other building and finish the processing and quantify the amount of precious metals contained in that product.
So is it kind of like breaking up into tiny little
It's all
pieces?
solids. It's all solids, yeah. Not quite tiny, but homogeneous sized pieces.
Just further on that, if there was chemical, you know, some type of use of that nature requires what's called a multi-sector general permit from DEM. This would be exempt from that because,
You get up, at that point, would you not be light industrial, heavy industrial at that point?
that's right, that's right. That's more of, you know, the Sims Metal Managements and those type companies that we get the multi-sector general permits for.
Okay. What else? You know, unfortunately, it's MU2 on one side of the street, residential on the other side of the street. You know,
That's right.
It's not like you're putting this in a residential part of town, you know, it's unfortunate that that's how that street is split. What else did I miss? Did I miss anything else in here? That's all my questions. Anyone else on the board have any questions?
I don't have any questions, I just have I had advised the building official and our chairman that I'm in the midst of a family emergency and my availability would be limited somewhat this evening. And I believe the applicant had been advised of that situation, and unfortunately, I'm up against that time. So, and without me, we can't make a decision, so we're gonna have to continue.
Let's defer to the solicitor. So Steve, would we move this to a date certain, which we know we have a date certain next week, right?
Yeah, the applicant's right here, so why don't you have an open colloquy with the applicant and their attorney and see what date works for a date certain, and just pick a date certain. You won't have to re-advertise, and we can come back, right? You guys have your schedules with you.
And maybe that gives them sufficient,
Unless, unless the board thinks they have enough to vote on it at this point.
no, I don't think so. No, I actually think it might be wise that there's further clarification with the zoning official, and I'll rely on his judgment on that, whether he feels that it's mixed use, but I think there also probably has to be an amendment to the application for the fencing.
And Chris, why don't you, because you're having a family emergency, why don't you not open that door right now? Why don't you just pick a date certain, talk to the applicant, let's come up with a date that works for them and the board, and then we can revisit. Chris has concerns, other members have concerns, you can pick a date certain and we can come back.
So we have a special meeting a week from tonight, which is the one that we pushed to that night. Could we move it to that night? Is that could be our earliest date, if that works for you guys.
I'm out of town.
Okay. So when's our next scheduled meeting, Larry, is the second week of September?
23rd? No, 20-something September, I think.
It should be earlier than that. The 13th, yeah, the reverse one would be the second week, and the second.
What is it?
No, 13th, we can't do.
Oh, good. Yeah, yeah, okay. That's right. So our next date would be, what'd you say, 24th?
Yeah,
Maybe it's better.
September 27th?
Let me just look at it.
that fourth Tuesday, right?
Yes. The 27th of September.
I do want to be a little clear on what we need, what you feel like we need to get you, because I'm not clear
I'll
on
get to
that.
next. I'll get to
Okay.
next. Yeah.
Good luck, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are you good with that date, or? Then
Yeah, 27th.
Yes, I'm sorry.
We're good.
Yep, okay.
Of
So,
September.
want to make a motion to, someone make a motion to move it to a date certain? Okay, so the motion is made to move, continue the meeting to September 27th,
And I'll second that.
okay? All in favor, we have to roll call, or all in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Okay, that's that. So you wanted, a landscape plan from the street?
Yeah, I'd like to see
Like
the
a-
screening proposed, showing that it blocks the building.
Yeah.
That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah, well, I know, we'll get that, that's perfect. Mr. Archibald? Yes. In relation to the fencing, at this point, if they wanted to do the fencing, they'd have to amend their application for that, or, because we can't entertain that, because that's not one of the variances they were asking for, correct?
We probably just submit that when we're closer to the end of this.
Would they have to come back in front of us? if
Yes.
They do? Yeah.
They could just amend the application for it. They don't have that relief before you right now, but they certainly could ask for that relief at the end. It's 12.11 subsection 19.
Yeah.
So we don't have to mention anything about that?
No, it's not on the table before you. You
And
agree?
related to traffic, we don't, as a zoning board, we don't really have any jurisdiction in that area, so.
No, we're focused on these four-dimensional variances. That's the scope of the planning board.
There was a mention about the clarification of the use, that's also not in front of you, so I'm not sure what else we can offer on
I think it would
that.
help if we got a written letter from the planner, that discussion took
Okay.
place, and what they're planning on doing there is considered light industrial.
You can certainly request that before the next meeting, and I'm sure our zoning official, Larry, can follow up and get that letter from our planner.
So that's the second thing. Was there anything else that we missed that someone else wanted something? Those are the two pieces, right? Or three pieces, right? Okay. Do we have to close the public hearing? We leave it open because we're gonna continue the next meeting, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I will be.
Everything open?
I leave it open. You pick the date certain, the meeting's not adjourned, it's just continued, and we'll revisit it at the next meeting, which is the 27th. 7 PM, same place.
Hopefully electricity.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Yes, all right, that was